Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Measuring Your Cartegraph ROI. My name is Damian Wade, and I'm the Marketing and Events Coordinator at Cartegraph. And here with me is Andy Richter, Engineering Supervisor with the City of Colorado Springs, and Todd Henderson, Cartegraph Solutions Consultant. And before we get started, to submit a question at any time during the course of the webinar, please select the question feature located in your GoToWebinar toolbar, and questions will be answered at the conclusion of the webinar. And I'm now going to turn things over to Todd.
Thank you, Damien. It's good to be with all of you today, and we're very excited about this webinar, and we're just very appreciative of Andy allowing us a window into his world there in Colorado Springs and some of the amazing things that they've been able to achieve with Cartegraph and getting that real return on investment that is so important when you have software that manages your city. It's important to get a return on that investment. So Andy's going to show us really multiple ways of how to get value out of the system, how to really push the system into what you need it to be so that you can get the data and kind of become that high-performance government organization that you know you can be. And so we're going to concentrate on those areas today of being more efficient, more effective, and more productive. As you look at this, you'll see those qualities in what Andy shares with us. So with that, I just want to say thank you, Andy, for allowing us to be a part of this today and for sharing your knowledge and what you've gained as you've used Cartegraph. And Andy is not only a client that we know, but also a friend. And so I always get a lot when I listen to Andy and the way he thinks and the way he causes the system to work for Colorado Springs is always an educational time for me, and things that I've really gleaned and really made use out of as I travel around the country and talk to other clients. So Andy, I want to say thanks for your thought leadership and for everything you're doing at Colorado Springs and really helping us to think about Cartegraph in a way that really helps us get that return on investment. So with that, Andy, take it away, and thanks so much for doing this today.
Great. Thank you, Todd, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andy Richter. Just to give you a real brief background of myself, I've been serving the city of Colorado Springs for 23 years now. In 2005, I took over the role of asset management within public works, and it slowly grew within the city over time. Throughout the presentation, I will be showing some very short videos, so if you'd like to make sure your speakers are turned on, that would be great. So just to give you a really quick current status of our organization, we've been a Cartegraph client since 2005 with Navigator product. We transitioned over to Cartegraph OMS in 2015, and we decided to be more of a phased approach rather than transitioning all the users all at once. With OMS, there's a lot of great areas that are part of product now, and we really wanted to create that model for success. And so we basically looked at the different workflows from all the Cartegraph Navigator users, and we really didn't want to break those current workflows. So that's when we actually phased in 4 different phases. We currently have 64 asset types inventoried. Most of them are nearing completion of that inventory, so it's really just a maintenance, and some of them are just starting. And so we really are tackling asset infrastructure throughout the city in a very precise plan. We currently have 350 users in the organization, and that's about 9 out of 19 departments. So some departments, for example, Public Works, pretty much all Public Works, those divisions are users of Cartegraph. We do have some others that are with another department, could be just one division. And so by building that model for success, we've been able to show how Cartegraph, really when we transitioned to OMS, that's really when we saw Cartegraph grow very quickly throughout our organization. So some of the challenges that we were looking at prior to going to an asset management solution, as many of you all know, you have many duplicate paper-based workflow processes. And so really trying to identify ways to streamline those workflows. Also future infrastructure needs with budget. it takes a lot of resources trying to find that when you really don't have a solution that's really all the information is at your fingertips to pull that information out very quickly depending on the question. We really had some divisions had a start of asset inventories, but a lot of them really are lacking on condition. And so we really wanted to address not only capturing the full inventory, but the most current condition, and then a course of action strategy. So really that way, as the system is growing within that department, really having that maintenance plan of tackling for your budget of different types of budget needs that you need. Also, researching cost of service information. So as you go through there and not having a solution tied to that information, it can be very time consuming on researching, and really where should you spend your dollars most efficiently and effectively across your organization. Also getting to more of a mobile electronic platform. So as users are adapting to Cartegraph, getting more of that paper processes and moving more to electronic platform, especially with the new Cartegraph app, is really crucial. We were in a non-supported IT environment with our current solutions, and then we really had a high risk of data failure. And so that was really something that we wanted to focus on when we migrated away from those homegrown solutions into the Cartegraph environment. So just to give you a brief process of how we were growing throughout the enterprise, throughout the organization, we really focused on the Cartegraph champion. I think that was probably the most critical thing that we talked to other organizations across the country. With that, basically that champion can then lead the charge, if you will, across other departments, which creates that buy-in process. So when you can show how a solution is actually creating efficiencies and working very well, that's how you can actually get that buy-in process through all levels of that department, from the initial director all the way through all levels of that area. Communication is very important no matter what you're trying to accomplish. And that's a really critical part of knowing the direction of your organization as far as asset management. And that blends in your teamwork. And so as folks are starting to see positive return on investment, they're like, yeah, I'm a part of that. So it's really self-gratifying to see something that you've put a lot of effort into actually seeing some great returns. So we really wanted to focus on several different areas, and one of those being reports, finances, project management, operations, communications, records management, and customer service. Those are our main focus points that we wanted to see when we transition into Cartegraph. And then that way, for each of those areas, we can then determine what those return on investment examples are. And we'll talk here real quickly about what types of return on investment examples you can really focus on, all within GIS and IT. And so really building that successful foundation throughout your organization is really critical. So when you're looking at measuring return on investment, I really focus on soft cost savings, really when you're blending in efficiencies, things like that, to where I would say soft cost savings. And another category is hard cost savings. So those are where you can find examples where you're actually saving hard dollars affecting your budget line items. And so that could be saving on servers, different areas where you can show actual dollars saved. So a lot of those processes, you really need to start at the very beginning of documenting, workflow, a lot of your pre and post project costs. So that way you can actually see from beginning of the project of how you're used to utilizing a solution, and then after implementing Cartegraph, you can actually show time saved or dollars saved. And so the really you also want to capture those investments, those one-time costs, and annual costs. So those are something like could be data collection, whether it's in-house or through a vendor, or also your implementation and hardware software costs. And so blending all that together, that way you have a true picture of how much you've invested inside your organization. It's important to note that not all return on investments will be instant. We've had a few groups where, for example, Pikes Peak Highway was actually about 26 months after implementation that they actually saw a positive return on investment. So that's important to know, just because in year one, after your implementation costs, and then year two, it could be towards, the end of year two, it could be into year three, we're actually showing a positive return. So that's fine. That's a great way to say that, after investing in your organization into a solution such as Cartegraph, that within 3 years you can show a positive return on investment is actually quite good. So some of the results that we've seen so far, we've been able to retire 15 databases and 38 spreadsheets. As many of you know, that used to be an organization that if someone wanted something to track, they would develop an Access database. And then over time, you kind of spiral out of control, and then you start having duplicate systems tracking the same thing. So that's not a good thing, especially from an IT standpoint, trying to manage all of that big data. And so improving communication with other departments and also our citizens. So as you'll see here shortly, that we've got some great examples of how you're gathering all this great information, but how do citizens actually consuming that information? And so I think that's really important to kind of note. You're kind of focusing on all your efforts and your goals within the department, but we also have to think about how this is going to improve citizens' access to this information. And then going electronic info for field crews. And so I think that's a great area where you can show, by spending a few dollars on a solution, how crews can work that much more efficiently with the same amount of staff that you have. So this first return on investment example is for cone zones. And so this is more of an operational efficiency where it's actually saving time and creating an efficiency. So with Cartegraph OMS, it's really opening the doors wide open for a lot of great ideas that we really didn't think was really possible with Cartegraph Navigator. So with the integration with ArcGIS Online, AGUL, we found that through this process, we were actually having quite a bit of staff resources trying to basically every week document where all the cone zones in the city were going to be. But that also created a publisher role that needed to go into ArcGIS and actually update that information. Well, we really wanted to streamline that whole process. And then once we implemented Cartegraph OMS, we were able to eliminate that publisher role within AGUL. So really the subject matter experts that are actually adding this information and updating this information right in Cartegraph was actually then going straight out and updating not only our map on our website, but here in a minute you'll see it's also being consumed in Waze, which is a traffic app. So by doing that, we're able to save 286 hours, which is not quite $11,000 a year, just by implementing and taking advantage of that off-the-shelf product functionality. So sharing data with other organizations. So we've got a lot of great projects right now. And so basically when you're creating those map services, you can then not only within your organization or externally, you can share that information. And so it's real-time, up-to-date info that you have available. And then we really asked ourselves, where are people going to find information? Are they spending a lot of time on our website, or are they actually utilizing other apps that are available off the shelf through their device? And so I want to, real quick here, to show you a video here.
Hello, I'm Jay Anderson, Citizen Engagement Specialist at the City of Colorado Springs. In late 2015, the city passed Issue 2C, the temporary sales tax increase to repair our transportation infrastructure, and the work is now underway. Issue 2C is an unprecedented investment in the quality of our community, and we want to show you how your tax dollars are being spent. By visiting coloradosprings.gov/cone zones, you can explore the city's scheduled work to fix and rebuild our roads. The map shows where traffic impacts are scheduled, what work is being done, and the estimated completion date. The Cone Zones map shows cone zones, where you can travel with partial closures, road closures, and even special events scheduled in the city. The Cone Zones map is a great way to explore how the city is spending your money to fix your roads. Now, the city is also partnering with the free Waze navigation app as a member of the Waze Connected Citizens program, a free, two-way data share of publicly available traffic information. The Waze platform quickly condenses multiple information streams from its users and municipal partners to answer the question, what's happening right now and where? We've joined this partnership to help the citizens of Colorado Springs travel around the city with a minimum of disruption from all the repair work we're doing, as well as to keep our road crews safe while they improve our community. This partnership allows the city to publish incidents, hazards, and road closures, and to have that public data displayed with the Waze app to help users get where they're going as smoothly as possible. So if you want to see where the city of Colorado Springs is doing work to repair our transportation infrastructure, visit coloradosprings.gov/cone zones. If you want to get where you're going safely and quickly and avoid the areas where this work is happening, the same data is now being used by Waze to get you quickly and safely to your destination. You can find more information about the Connected Citizens Partnership and the city's stance on public traffic data at coloradosprings.gov/cone zones. Thanks for your time, and be safe out there, Colorado Springs.
We had a lot of great positive feedback from citizens after that launch of that product, and it was very quick. It was very easy to configure a map service, and then Waze is in consuming that service. And so I can't say a lot of great things. That's really the first one, but there's a lot of great ideas that we're showcasing that for future needs that we can use that same sort of model to have citizens consume information. And so really what we did was we created a asset of cone zones for lines with several attributes. So as that information, like I said, is entered by a subject matter expert, usually through when a permit is approved for traffic control, then it's entered in Cartegraph. And then as updates happen all the way through completion of that cone zone, once that status is then complete, it'll then remove it automatically from our website map and then also from Waze. And so it's very quick and up to date. And so this is our website map. And so it's showing active cone zones, roads that may be closed, and also special events. And we have future ideas to blend in more of our park and rec folks for special events that are happening all over town. And so this is just looking at Waze, the Waze app. So basically that information is then, like I said, very quick, very easy to consume for users, and then route them around the closure or the delay. Another example is scripting. And so when we launched Cartegraph Navigator in 2005, we really were looking at ways to automate certain parts that we would do all the time when entering records. And so by then implementing Cartegraph OMS, that was actually part of off-the-shelf product. And so we were able then to eliminate that scripting. So it saved us a little over $13,000 a year in those maintenance of those scripts, just by utilizing OMS capabilities. The next return on this is really focused on traffic engineering division. And we really wanted to document, it's funny when you're implementing a new solution and you really are talking to a division or a department, and sometimes you'll get cross information, and it's like, well, this is how I work the workflow. Another group is like, no, this is the way I do it in our group. And come to find out as everyone comes together, it's like, oh, well, obviously we have a miscommunication here. So that's a great time to actually document your workflow. And then once you create that manual of all your procedures, and then it's there. So it's very easy to update So as folks retire, all that knowledge basically is captured. But this shows just a quick example of the flow chart for traffic with the process. Once we implemented Cartegraph, we were able to eliminate 5 steps in the flow process. And then for each step, we actually calculated all the staff members, how much time are they spending on each step, which equates to their labor dollars. And so we were then able to then see for those 5 steps, we were able to calculate it was about $564,000 in labor efficiency for just eliminating 5 steps in the workflow process. And so when we looked at that and we're like, wow, this is fantastic, because then we were realizing that we had duplicate processes, and it's like, well, why is that occurring with another group that's doing the exact same process? And so that's a great way of not only being more efficient, but also showing that once you implement Cartegraph, that you actually can show that positive effect. So the next step, once we implemented, we were then looking at wireless solutions in the field. At the time, we decided on Panasonic ruggedized Toughbooks. So now we're actually migrating away from that because we realized, well, they're not really that tough on the device. And we're actually going to, HP Revolves. Some groups actually use the iPad, and now especially with the phone app for Android and iPhones, that's really opening the doors for a lot of other groups, through our airport and all these other great departments that are utilizing Cartegraph. And so by doing that, for example, crews can respond to tasks more efficiently. We had many examples where in a paper-based environment, they were could be right around the corner from a work order, a task, and they really didn't know that, right? So this is very quick to see where all those tasks are, and so then they're like, they don't have to redeploy the entire crew and drive back to almost the same spot they were at. It's right around the corner. We can take care of it, and we can move on to the next one. And so that's been fantastic. So for implementing a wireless solution, this is just showing in 2004, prior to implementing Cartegraph. And then 2006, we added 9 wireless devices. This is showing us the total number of work orders going from 2004 to 2006. So we're able to complete almost 3,000 additional work orders, or 130% additional efficiency. And then 2007, 8, and 9, we added some additional units. And then obviously once you get to that sort of that plateau of the number of devices with the amount of staff, but overall, we're then able to increase that to about 8,500 tasks, which is about 275% overall, which is fantastic with the same amount of people. And so really it's just, having them with what you have as far as resources and giving them the tools necessary to be more efficient. So overall, with the gain labor efficiency, and then also looked at the investment of the wireless technology. So all of the, the laptops, the stands, wireless card annual cost, and then VPN accounts. We were then looking at 42.3% return, which is almost about $92,000 for that effort. And so that was fantastic for us. And then as the great thing, once that momentum is building, you see other departments are like, wow, we're hearing great things. And, how are you guys accomplishing that? So then it starts spreading throughout the organization, right? And so then people are then excited. They're like, we want to do this as well, so it's great to where, they're like, when can we do this? When can we implement this? And so there's that excitement that's building, and which is fantastic, rather than having try to fight you along the way and doubt what you're trying to accomplish. This is an interesting topic for traffic accident billings. So I also managed that solution, and prior to Cartegraph, of course, everything was paper, it's very hard to manage paper. We all know that. But basically in 2005, right here, we're able only to return $734 in damaged assets between signs, signals, guardrail, and bridges. That's not very good. So that equates to maybe 5 or 6 sign replacements. And so as we went through this process, I really wanted to lock down and look at being more efficient on actually knowing exactly what's damaged and then tying that to a traffic accident report through the police department to actually then bill the insurance company or the individual that may not have insurance. And so through the process, as we see, we were getting a lot more return. But I would say that once we got to OMS, that's where it was a lot easier, just because the spatial component of where that task is occurring, we can then tie that and know exactly, now it's tied directly to an asset. And then that's so much easier when you're trying to research a traffic accident report to find that crash data. And so just to give you an idea, in 2016, we're now up to we're over $115,000 in invoicing our damage for the same type of assets. So I think that's a fantastic story of going from about $700 a year to over $115,000. Because as we all know, if we're not able to get that restitution, then basically we have to find it somewhere in our budget, right? We have to make it safe for citizens. And so we actually have to find the money and repair that so it's safe. A great thing with Cartegraph OMS is that we're actually utilizing a lot of the other costs as part of tasks. And so we're actually capturing a lot of these contractor costs, and we're utilizing this information and reports as we get monthly bills to actually show that the amount of invoicing that we get from the contractor is exactly what we're showing that they accomplished on that task or on that work order. So this is just for public works, operations, and maintenance. We were over $26 million in contracted services. Primarily that's for paving and other asphalt type activities. But I think that's a great way to capture that information. And obviously, you have internal staff and contracted staff that's all being part of that total cost for that activity. So one thing that we all kind of dread, and it's just a fact for government, is lawsuits. It's unfortunate that it's not if you're going to be sued, but when. And so really having a solution, having the information all together in one centralized location is fantastic. But also documenting as you're going through the workflow processes. So in 2010, we actually had an issue from a down stop sign. Someone ran that stop sign while it was down and got an accident. We were able to show in court all of the timestamps of when we were actually notified, for when the crew was dispatched, for when the crew arrived on scene, fixed it, was all within 37 minutes. So that's actually and actually with the city, we have an hour to respond in those types of incidents. So we were able to show it took 37 minutes through the entire workflow process of when we were notified to actually resolving the situation. So which saved us from paying a $250,000 lawsuit. And so I think that's just awesome how you can actually take information that everyone is being a part of the entire process and helping the organization in those types of cases. So for traffic engineering, so as an overall investment cost, they were really the first adopters of Cartegraph. And so they really actually shared, a lot more of the initial investment of Cartegraph. So with the investment costs and then the hard cash and efficiency returns, we're able to show just a hair over 24% return for that division. And I think as we grow and actually looking at other areas of different divisions and departments, we can actually capitalize on additional examples. So this next one for forestry. Forestry, just like all, it's a very small group. We rely heavily on contracted services. And so we assign, just like we did with traffic, we assign each step of the workflow, the amount of staff time equates to dollars in each step before implementing Cartegraph. And so then we also looked at their asset inventory, and a lot of the tree inventory, basically it was a non-supported environment from a vendor that actually left the U.S. market, went back overseas into England. We had no support, and so actually it was 4 years where this information wasn't being able to access. But there was so much great information in there that we didn't want to lose it, at least giving us a starting point, a basis of inventory. Obviously, within 4 years, your inventory will change. Trees will be planted. Unfortunately, trees will be taken down. But at least it gives us a starting point to at least grow from. And so just by getting that information out of that environment, getting into Cartegraph, being able to start, utilizing information when needed, maybe even cleaning that information up within different park areas, I think that was huge. And so rather than recollecting all that information, that gave us a good starting point. And so just by getting that into Cartegraph and not having to recollect that was about $575,000 to giving us at least a starting point. I will make a note that we are looking at, since it was 4 years, that we are actually looking at possibly, with a new data collection effort going through, and we'll talk about that towards the end, of actually recollecting all of our tree information along the right-of-way. But at least we'll definitely keep the park information. So this will be adjusted through time. But for now, with the investment costs and then the hard cash and efficiency return, a little over 3,000, about 3,100% return on that. So this is just a great way of showing that, for such a small group of folks, that you can actually see a lot larger return of investment. So overall, with the current ROI, we're about 1.6 million. Altogether, with all the efficiency returns, we're just under 2.3 million. So overall, so far, we're looking at about a 41.5% ROI for the project. And so I think really migrating from Navigator to OMS, it's really going to open us a lot more doors. And really, it's just your imagination is the limit now. It's not really the solution. And so as you're getting a lot of great ideas and submitting those to the Cartegraph portal, ideas portal, I think as new upgrades are happening, there's a lot of great energy, positive energy around getting these ideas incorporated in the product that it's just going to grow from here. So for data collection, I want to talk briefly about the data collection services of Cartegraph. We utilized their service in 2015, 2016. For us, for pavement inspections, it's a very intensive manual process. And it basically, for about 1,400 lane miles, it took us a little over a year, about 13 months to collect and process about a third of our network. As you can see, if it takes us about a year to do a third, as you can see, definitely within Colorado, that with all of our freeze-thaw cycles, it would take us 3 years to complete that network analysis. That is way too long trying to get that type of information because it can change dramatically from season to season. And then trying to not only create a maintenance plan with data that could potentially be 2, if not almost 3 years old, really is very hard to do. And you're starting to realize that we're being overwhelmed. We're not tackling this issue as we should. And so we really wanted to reach out and use technology as being a more efficient way of collecting this information. And so with Cartegraph, they were able to complete a third of that network area in the same amount of lane miles in 6 months. The detailed information was far beyond what we expected. They were measuring deficiencies every 100 feet Not only that, but we're also looking at thickness of the pavement. So there's a lot of areas in town that it could be very thick for issues underneath, the base course and basically the base of that asset, or it could be within maybe a 2-inch mat. And so for us, it's very, very a wide range. And so we don't know what's potentially going on underneath the pavement of causing these issues that we're seeing on the surface. So by having this technology, it's a lot quicker, and you get a lot great amount of data in return. I do want to show one more video here.
You can tell right away that this is no ordinary car. The flashing lights, the cameras on top, this is actually a valuable new tool from a company that our city has been working with for a while.
The city partnered with Cartegraph Data Collection Services in 2015. We really needed a condition assessment on multiple assets throughout the city.
The driver hits the road, and the cameras and computers go to work, capturing images and gathering information about the condition of things like medians, guardrails, and much more.
It can actually give a lot more detailed information with the type of technology. For example, it can scan the depth of the asphalt, so we'll know exactly how deep the asphalt is, how thick it is. And so really trying to do that manually is almost next to impossible. So for example, for pedestrian ramps, we're actually collecting information to see if they're ADA compliant for all the pedestrian ramps in the city. The technology really speeds up that data collection process, and so we can really spend the tax dollars more efficiently and to really address the roads that really need attention now. We can also use that technology to predict what kind of maintenance activities we'll need to do in the near future, and that way we can extend the life of the asset instead of having it go from very good condition in one winter and then within a year it goes into poor condition. And so it really gives us that software, that technology to really make data-driven decisions.
You may spot this car out and about through the end of June, and the data it gathers will help guide our city's planning process that aims to make your ride as smooth and safe as possible.
I would now like to open things up for Q&A.
Understanding that when the status is complete, the cone zone is removed from the map, how do you manage when the cone zone is populated on the map? Do you create that on the day when the cone zone begins?
So we actually, as soon as that trigger, as the permit for that traffic control permit is approved, we then know basically potentially when they're going to be on site. Obviously with weather that can change, but then we have fields that basically a tentative timeline of when that cone zone is going to be there to happen. And so obviously that tighter time frame is better, but also you have ongoing projects that could take 1 to 2 years for major construction plans. So that basically that'll stay active for, it could be one day, it could be for several years.
Okay, and your ROI, had another question come in here. Your ROI example shows a lot of pre-OMS dates prior to 2014. Are you still collecting ROI data now that you are using OMS?
Yep, and so cone zones is one of those in 2015. So obviously we were solely focused on implementation. As I mentioned, we split up the implementation of OMS in several phases. Now we're basically have everyone migrated over, and so now we can focus on even processes that we had in Navigator to processes now, just like the cone zone example. And so now we're actually going to be focusing on those in more detail to have brand new examples.
Okay, and I'm not sure which slide you threw out this dollar amount, but this question came in. How did you calculate your investment cost to be $1.6 million?
Yeah, so basically those were a combination of hard cost savings and soft cost savings. So basically as a positive return. So really all those costs from implementation, yearly maintenance, things like that, were all components of expenses versus money saved. And so combining those two different categories, that's how we're able to see the overall return.
Okay, and can you clarify if you're on a hosted system or an enterprise hosted system? And if on an enterprise hosted system, why use AGL rather than publishing map apps?
Yeah, so we are on a hosted environment with Cartegraph. We're just starting to get into more of the the level 1, level 2 ArcGIS Online. We're actually looking at different ways of publishing them. So that is one topic that we're actually thinking about and going and with more with more map-driven type environment rather than AGL. But that's still under conversation, if you will, within the organization.
Okay, and then we had a question on whether or not we can share this PowerPoint for later reference, and the answer is yes, we will absolutely share that with you. Okay, and then do you control edit permissions more on the ArcGIS side or the Cartegraph side for your field workers?
Yep, so that's all on the Cartegraph side. So we do have roles. We did find our roles grew. Just because of could be more resource driven, it could be more asset driven, and so as when we first started with OMS, we had the basic roles, but we did expand on those to be more refined to where we can have permissions for folks that are actually more GIS driven versus more view permissions.
Okay. And you mentioned traffic engineering as an example of ROI. Can you expand on how OMS is used to save costs?
Yeah, so we're actually as more folks are getting more into the phone app, it's great to where, especially for signals. I'll use traffic signals as a great example. So when we have issues with signals, it'll send out a notification. So it would be great if that notification goes right to the user's cell phone for their iPhone, and then all of a sudden they can then generate a task to know when they're dispatched out. And obviously with a 24/7 operation, the easier the information can be to consume, it's easier for the technician to respond, and that much quicker to then resolve the issue. I think with signs and markings, you get the ability to see information for folks that are more visual on a map. They were our first adapters with Navigator that basically at that time you actually needed 2 screens between ArcGIS and Navigator, but now with OMS, having that information right there, they can click on that point or that line and enter their information is so much smoother than it was with Navigator. So I think being able to have the ability for more visual access of information can be faster for users.
Okay. And do you guys have a full-time GIS analyst, and what benefit does that give you?
Yeah, so we, for our structure, we actually have within IT, we have a GIS division within IT. They're more focused on structure and not so much data maintenance. And so they're really handling STE, AGL, that type of information. Within each department, we do have some folks that are more dedicated to GIS that are both driven by ArcGIS, and then some are actually driven by both Cartegraph and GIS. And so by having that, basically those two environments, if you will, with those users, it's a lot easier for sharing information, right? So they may be a data maintainer, and then they also know their data a lot easier than maybe another department does. But that sharing capability is so much easier now, now that we've migrated to OMS.
Okay. Hey, Kinjal, happy you made it to the webinar. How do you tackle access to information issues when crews using personal phones to enter data in OMS in the field?
Yep. So it's a great question. So we're actually kind of behind the times as far as our phone technology for what the users need as a tool in the field. And so be able to take pictures, video, that is something that we're tackling right now. The recommendation from IT is basically not to use their personal device, especially for Quora type requests from the public. But that really just shows the how technology is changing to where basically we need to offer our users the device that they need in the field, right? And so going away from the flip phone type technology into a smart device is here. And so I think as an organization, we just need to basically get there for all of our users a little bit faster. And so it's a little frustrating for users that they see how this technology can save time for them. But when the organization may say, well, it might be a budget restraint or something that, they may not have a smart device yet. But that's a great question. So we're actually tackling that right now.
Okay, and do you have a sidewalk inventory in OMS?
We do. A previous employee, Jason Fields, that worked for the city, actually was able to get some data and actually get that information to OMS very quickly from GIS. We just had to do a little data cleanup as far as the boundaries of that line on the start and end points of it. But yeah, so now we're actually tackling here once the data collection effort is complete of actually capturing cross slope from the video that was collected this year. So to be more ADA compliant for cross slopes of sidewalks. So yeah, that's going to be huge for ADA compliance.
Okay. Do you need a breather here, Andy?
No, I'm good.
All right. Hey, if you could go back in time, what would you have done differently when you first started using Cartegraph?
Yep. I definitely would have the timeline from training the users to go live, a very small window. Especially that's when we decided to go more of a phased approach. It's more manageable. You then you don't have as much stress, not only as you as administrator, but also your users, because you can be able to focus your time a lot better for each phase. I definitely would have had that a tighter role when we were in Navigator. And then we were able to basically create that model for success in OMS. And basically we can roll out that same model for each group, a lot faster.
Okay. And can you give some examples of scripting that you had talked about in your presentation?
Yeah, so really when we were entering records, we had, for example, some scripts in the material side of calculating square feet, some different equations that we were utilizing in the more of the resources area. Also, we had one for time. So when obviously now OMS is standard product, but with Navigator, basically it would take the start time and end time and then calculate how many minutes that was. And that would automatically insert into the labor record. Obviously with OMS, that's standard product now, but with Navigator, we felt that that was money well spent to have that functionality. I think that was a big one. There was another one, I think more on the pavement area. It's really more asset driven. Again, there was more calculation of this field and that field to give you the result. And so we were able to basically with that process, with the time and things like that, we're able to eliminate a lot of those.
Okay, and can you expand on how your forestry department is utilizing OMS? What data are they capturing and how are they utilizing the data?
Yeah, so for example, in parks, the spatial component of the data wasn't the best for parks and right of way. It was a lot better in the park environment. So they're able to then kind of clean up that information to know the trunk diameter, the species, the height, and all the maintenance towards that tree. And the reason why we're looking at more of a new inventory for our right-of-way trees, because when we pulled that information out of the older system, basically it wasn't running, where the tree actually was. It was doing some sort of buffer to where it was actually more diagonal across a lot or a parcel, rather than being more vertical or horizontal. And so obviously trying to move all those points, making sure those trees are actually still there is a huge effort. And so I think they're one of our early adopters of Cartegraph, and especially for a very small crew that they have with the amount of trees that we do have to maintain. They were at the time, they're like, we need help, so anything that could, be more automated, now having, like I said, that map to know where tasks are, being able to prioritize those tasks. A huge thing for forestry is actually if they're doing tree trimming along a corridor, they actually can highlight all of those tasks along a corridor and then average their time, their vehicle, excuse me, for all of those, instead of closing out each individual task or work order at a time like they used to do in Navigator. That has been huge for all groups to be able to utilize that functionality.
Okay, and we had two people actually ask this question. Did you have any internal or custom fields from Navigator that did not integrate into OMS? If so, how did you handle this data?
We actually were looking at the data, and this is a great way of when you're starting an asset management solution or any solution. And if it's something that you're going from paper to electronic, what I call data drunk, right? So it's like, let's just go crazy and collect all this stuff that we've never been able to do, right? So as folks are doing that, it's like, well, are you actually going to be using this information and reporting on it? Asking some of those key questions. They're like, oh yes, absolutely. Well, then as we went from Navigator to OMS, we actually went through every single field for all divisions and showed them, you're only using this field twice. We don't really need it now, right? And they're like, well, yeah, you're right. And that way you can actually bring over data or bring over fields that you're actually using. That was the great thing about Navigator and Cartegraph in general, is that you can mold it to fit your needs. But that's also, when we were doing Navigator, we found we went way overboard, and it's just cluttering up your form. It's information. It takes so long to enter and close out, and that really helped us actually in OMS to kind of take those lessons learned and apply them to OMS.
Okay, and final question, Andy. Where do you see Colorado Springs heading with the software?
Yeah, so we just implemented facilities towards the end of last year. Our Colorado Springs Airport is probably the quickest adapter within facilities. Just to show you, basically they're able to show now all of their maintenance tasks and be able to bill each airline for what they've done as far as maintenance. And also they know exactly per hallway and per room how much they're spending at any given point. I think is fantastic if you want to get to that detail. Obviously, they're more of a contractor, if you will, providing a service, right, to these airlines. And so I think that's just a huge example of how well and how easy it is to adapt OMS to fit any sort of scenario. And so whether it be, different types of shapes of assets, I think really is huge. And so we're going to focus more on facilities across the enterprise, just to get everyone going in the same direction. But also, like I mentioned earlier, with ADA compliance, I think that's something that many organizations may overlook. But I think you're going to find very soon that people are going to be approaching your organization and trying to say, how much are you changing to be ADA compliant? I think that's something that you're going to find in as an industry very quickly, that we're actually seeing in Colorado. So I think we're going to focus on two of those, and also right-of-way management. Who owns what? And that's going to be fantastic for when someone calls in and saying, well, there's trash or weeds that are 5 feet high, something that's got to be done about it. We'll know exactly through that parcel of, is it city or is it private homeowners association that needs to take care of it, and we can put them on notice. So that's something that we're focusing on the remaining of this year and into next.
Thanks a lot for your presentation today, Andy. That was awesome. You definitely were put on the spot with those questions. I was throwing them at you like crazy, so great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we're getting a lot of excellent thank yous in the questions area, so fantastic job, and thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this today.